and I am doing my final for LED510 and my case study, as well as the questions and a couple of other things that were attached for our final. I chose to do discrimination in the workplace, and it is on a Dr. Naiel Nassar. I'm going to spell his name. It is first name Naiel, and the last name is Nassar. So please forgive me if I mispronounce it. I'm going to start off with Acts 17:26. From one man he made every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he determined the times set for them and the exact places where they should live. I chose to do my case study on Dr. Naiel Nassar. He was signaled out by his supervisor, presumably due to his religion and ethnicity. I believe no one person should be discriminated against due to race, ethnicity, disability, appearance, religion, for any reason whatsoever. I realize there are laws protecting individuals against discrimination, yet I feel morally we shouldn't need a law to tell us to love our neighbor. We have the Bible as a tool. Mark 12:31 tells you to love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. Rizal spoke of wise leaders in his Handbook to Leadership, and this is from my Kindle, location 4943 of 7203, and I quote, "Wise leaders will solve problems in a way that produces the best results. In every arena of life, they will build their lives on the words of Jesus, living out of his example of servant leadership." And here again, if we turn to the Bible, we will find the answers that we seek. I'm going to begin my case study now. Dr. Naiel Nassar is of a Middle Eastern descent. He was born in Egypt and he is Muslim, and he is a United States citizen. He was a faculty member at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, and it's abbreviated to UTSW. And the university is an affiliate of Parkland Hospital, which has an HIV and AIDS clinic. The clinic is where Dr. Nassar worked. Dr. Nassar's salary was completely funded by a federal grant. Dr. Nassar had no complaints from fellow co-workers, with the exception of his supervisor, Dr. Beth Levine, who was in charge of the whole clinic at Parkland Hospital. I'm going to outline a few of her complaints and her personal beliefs that she shared with her coworkers. The first are her complaints against Dr. Nassar. Dr. Levine believed Dr. Nassar should bill insurers for his services. Dr. Levine questioned whether Dr. Nassar was really working. Dr. Levine questioned the quality of Dr. Nassar's work, and Dr. Levine questioned Dr. Nassar's billing hours. Now, some of her personal beliefs that she shared with coworkers were that she was of the Jewish faith. She believed that all Middle Easterners were lazy, and she was in disbelief that the UTSW hired quote-unquote another one, referring to Dr. Nassar's race and ethnicity. Now, Dr. Nassar did not receive complaints from fellow coworkers in regards to his performance. As a matter of fact, Dr. Philip Kaiser, who was the supervisor of the HIV and AIDS clinic at Parkland Hospital, said in a sworn affidavit, quote unquote, "A disconnect between Dr. Levine's statements and the reality of Dr. Nassar's work." He said Nassar saw more patients than any other doctor at the clinic, which has historically relied on UT Southwestern to provide its medical staff. And this is from the Dallas Morning News. Dr. Levine made comments to Dr. Kaiser on numerous occasions. She may have felt comfortable with talking with Dr. Kaiser because she also felt that Dr. Kaiser was of the Jewish faith as she was, when in fact Dr. Kaiser was a Christian. Dr. Levine told Dr. Kaiser, and this was shortly after she started working for the clinic, Dr. Beth Levine, the doctor in charge of the entire clinic, began asking Dr. Philip Kaiser, Nassar's supervisor, about Nassar's work habits and billing practices. When talking with Kaiser, Levine made a number of offensive comments, including remarks such as Middle Easterners are lazy, and the hospital had hired another one, presumably referring to Nassar's race or ethnicity. Kaiser told Nassar about these remarks and that Levine criticized the quality of Nassar's work and the number of billing hours more than she did the rest of the doctors. Now, this was from the www.cornell.edu website, which did a case study on this discrimination suit as well. Dr. Nassar knew of other doctors of Middle Eastern descent that had experienced the same discriminatory practices at the UTSW. Due to his own treatment by Dr. Levine and the history of discrimination with others, Dr. Nassar tried to switch supervisors. He spoke with a Dr. Gregory Fitz, who was the head of the internal medicine department at the hospital, and he was also Dr. Levine's he was also Dr. Levine's supervisor as well. He also sought promotion and a transfer to Parkland Hospital. Parkland Hospital offered to hire Dr. Nassar to work at the clinic, but he would have to resign from his position at the UTSW first. So on June 30th, 2006, Nassar was officially offered a job in the Parkland clinic on Parkland's payroll to start as of July 10th, 2006. In the interim period, after being offered the job but before starting, Dr. Nassar resigned from the university. In his resignation letter, Dr. Nassar cited Dr. Levine's conduct, harassment, and discrimination as the primary reasons for his resignation. Either before deciding whether to transfer Nassar or immediately after, Dr. Fitz blocked Dr. Nassar's hiring. And this is from the www.cornell.edu website as well. All of this is quite concerning, considering Dr. Levine consistently complained and gossiped to others about a subordinate. She also was a supervisor, so her actions could be seen as very unprofessional and even as illegal. She did, however, contradict herself. Dr. Nassar was hired to the UTSW in 2001, and in the spring of 2006, he was promoted, and Dr. Levine recommended him for this promotion. She wrote a recommendation letter to her boss, and in this she said, quote unquote, "He is an outstanding clinician whose accomplishments in clinical medicine far exceed his rank of assistant professor." And this is from the Dallas Morning News. To support the claims that Dr. Levine was acting in a discriminatory manner, when Dr. Nassar left the UTSW, there was a position vacancy left when he left. Dr. Levine offered the position to another Pakistani-born Muslim, whom was recommended by Dr. Kaiser. The salary she offered the doctor was extremely low. In the end, she wound up hiring a white doctor, whom was less qualified for this position, and she offered him more than what she had offered the Pakistani-born Muslim doctor. Dr. Nassar also questioned the ethics behind Dr. Levine questioning him as to why he is not billing his patients insurance for visits. And according to Dr. Nassar, this was a legal practice because his salary was fully funded by a federal grant. He went on to state, quote unquote, "If UTSW were allowed to bill for the salary position of one of its professors that is fully funded by the taxpayers, then UTSW would be, as the saying goes, double dipping." And this is from the Dallas Morning News. Ultimately, Dr. Nassar filed a discrimination lawsuit against his former employer. He alleged that his former employer, the UTSW, as well as Dr. Levine and Dr. Fitz, discriminated against him based on his religion and ethnicity. He had to endure derogatory comments. His transfer to Parkland Hospital was halted due to Dr. Levine, and this was considered retaliation. He also felt harassed by Dr. Levine. All of this led to his resignation. He could no longer handle the treatment he was receiving from his former employer. Now, the 5 questions that I would ask in regards to this case study are, number 1 would be, how could Dr. Fitz have handled the situation better? Number 2, should Dr. Kaiser have reported Dr. Levine's comments to his supervisor? Number 3, should Dr. Kaiser have told Dr. Nassar about the comments and the racial slurs Dr. Levine was making about him? 4, how could Parkland Hospital have handled the situation with Dr. Nassar and the UTSW better? And 5, could Dr. Nassar have went above Dr. Fitz to file a complaint without fear of retaliation? The issues I would expect a student to raise in analyzing and responding to this case are, I believe there are many issues with this case. Discrimination on any level should never be tolerated within any organization. Phillips and Gawley in Organizational Behavior, Tools for Success spoke of how Dr. Nassar may felt, and this is from Organizational Behavior on page 49, and quote, "If diverse employees are not included in organizational decision making, or if they are marginalized at work, not only are their potential contributions not being realized, but they also are more likely to leave the organization entirely." Dr. Nassar definitely felt marginalized by Dr. Levine. Her comments were demeaning and did not reflect Dr. Nassar's performance or abilities as a doctor. The fact that the UTSW allowed this behavior to continue, even when Dr. Levine's behavior was brought to the attention of her superiors, is very troubling. It leaves unanswered questions, such as, does the UTSW support this type of discriminatory behavior, considering that they not only did it with Dr. Nassar, but there were other Pakistani and Muslim faith doctors that experience discrimination there. Does the university have a code of conduct? Do they have a code of ethics? Dr. Kaiser felt that he was being signaled out for supporting Dr. Nassar. He claimed that the UTSW tried to have him removed from his clinical position. And this is wrong. An employee shouldn't fear reprisal for standing up and supporting a fellow coworker and for doing the right thing. The UTSW needs to be more vigilant in investigating claims of discrimination, of harassment, of retaliation. There needs to be a written standard for situations like this, and a neutral party that handles any complaints. A good resource many large corporations have started using is anonymous reporting. This allows an employee to report a problem within a department. A third party investigates the problem, this solution is worked out. If after the initial investigation and the initial solution do not work, then the corporation handles the situation with a zero tolerance attitude. And this is how I feel the UTSW should have handled this situation. Allowing Dr. Levine to continue to work in her capacity was not only wrong, it was setting up the UTSW for a lawsuit such as this. I mean, also, there are some of these employees that are still employed with this organization. That's a travesty. These employees should not be allowed to be in a position of power with their personal beliefs and attitudes towards others. The elements of the discussion of traditional ethical theory I would expect the students to include. I chose normative ethics. Beauchamp discussed normative ethics, and he discussed this in Ethical Theory of Business, and this is on page 7. And I quote, "Principles of normative ethics are commonly used to treat specific moral problems such as fairness in contracts, conflicts of interest, environmental pollution, mistreatment of animals, and racial and sexual discrimination." Now, this applies in the sense that Dr. Nassar felt he was being discriminated against due to his race. Also, there was a conflict of interest. Dr. Fitz's personal and professional relationship with Dr. Levine allowed for there to be no resolution to the problem at hand. The UTSW did not address the situation as it should have. Not only did Dr. Nassar felt he was working in a hostile environment due to the racial and ethnic slurs from Dr. Levine, Dr. Kaiser, the coworker that stood up for him, felt he was being retaliated against for doing the right thing as well. Some may say that after 9/11, it's become normal for non-Muslims to treat Muslims differently. But morally, this is wrong. And this is not normal. A moral person will not treat another person different because their ethnicity is not the same as theirs. Being ethical should come normal. The Bible tells us in John 16:13, "But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all truth. He will not speak on his own. He will speak only what he hears, and he will tell you what is yet to come." Morals are not much different in different cultures. Many believe you treat others with dignity and respect. You respect your elders. You do unto others as you would have done unto you. Saying different cultures act differently is too broad of a statement. It should be human nature to treat others with respect. We can no longer hide behind a veil of culture to blame our moral disparity. No one human should treat another human disrespectfully just because they're different. With normative ethics, it should be standard. It should be normal to treat others with respect. We should look past race, ethnicity, religion, appearance, and judge someone based on their abilities. Judge that person based on them as an individual. This should become our new normal. Dr. Levine crossed the line when she harassed Dr. Nassar, when she assumed all Muslims were the same. I mean, this would be the same as me telling her, well, all Jewish people are the same. Dr. Fitz did not react as a supervisor should and investigate the behavior. He allowed the behavior to continue and even allowed Dr. Kaiser to feel threatened due to his standing up to a coworker. This goes against normative ethics. In closing, I just feel, I know there's going to be discrimination in the world, and I know I don't hold the solution to all the problems in the world. But if we look to the Bible and look to our faith, it teaches us morals. There are many answers to our questions. We should never look at somebody and judge them by the way that they look. We should never assume somebody is a certain way because of the way they dress, the way they act, because of their religion. We base that person on their abilities as a professional. We base that person on their abilities as an individual. We base it on their character, on their integrity, not on how they appear the minute they walk in the door. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you and have a good evening.